Hi friends, I made this short video to help you with your graphing in terms of how to use Google Docs, which could be applied to Excel also. So in other words, how to make a graph using a spreadsheet. So I asked you to graph this data, which you did at least set up once on paper and pencil. And it's to look at the effect of nitrogen, specifically nitrates, on how much algae grew and eventually kind of sucked out all the oxygen as it died. So as in any graph, the first thing you have to figure out is what is independent, what is dependent. And the researcher here knew exactly how much nitrogen was going to be placed into the water and into the algae, but didn't know what effect it was going to be having in the long run, or in other words, how much oxygen would show up later on after 3 weeks. So nitrate concentration would be the independent variable on the x-axis, and the dissolved oxygen would be the dependent variable on the y-axis. Now I sent this to you also as a Word document like this, because what you can do is just copy the table. So I'm going to go to Edit, Copy, and then I'm going to go to my mail. I click on my mail, so I want to open up a spreadsheet in Google Docs. And I go to Drive, I go to Create, and I want to create a spreadsheet, and it should look something like that. And since it's already in memory, hopefully, if I just put it any old place here and paste in here, I should end up having my data I want. Now I'm just going to simplify it a little bit and just make sure it's just nitrates on one column and dissolved oxygen on the other column. And we can kind of get rid of the other stuff for now, but we do need to know that it's milligrams per liter of nitrates and parts per million of dissolved oxygen. And I'm just going to make it look a little fancier by center justifying it and maybe put a chart around it, something like that, but you don't have to do that. So you might recall that what you need to do is to highlight your data. So I'm going to highlight the 0 down to the 1, so this whole bit of data here, and then insert a chart. Remember, a chart is what we talk about in spreadsheets, at least in Google, is what a graph is. I can do it here, or I can just use a little icon here, insert chart here. It doesn't matter, same thing. I click on that, and I get some choices here. And this doesn't kind of look like what we want. You kind of already know what it's going to look like because you kind of set it up. It's just going to be a single line that kind of, as the nitrates go up, oxygen starts going down to a point. So if I go to charts, and the one that we did in class, which should be the one you use here, would be the scatter graph. And if I click on this, it's saying, it doesn't, interesting. Let's go see what that's all about. So I'm going to hit cancel. Oh, that's why, because I didn't got unhighlighted somehow. So I've got to highlight it, go back to insert chart, and then go back to my charts, and now it is colorful. And this is kind of what we want, that we started out with very little oxygen, very little nitrates here, because this is on the x-axis, and as we added more nitrogen, it grew a little bit more, which we'd expect green algae to do, and it would carry out more photosynthesis and carry out more and give off more oxygen, so dissolved oxygen goes up to the point where we get too much algae growth. It gets all dark and turbid, the plants die, and bacteria come in, decompose it, and oxygen levels drop right down. But let's finish the graphing part. If you turn this in, I'd say nice, but things aren't labeled. You might recall if you click on Customize, and we can put in a chart title, which might be, I'll be very brief about this because I don't type very well, as you can see. Effect of nitrates on algae growth. And that's essentially what you're kind of measuring here. You can say dissolved oxygen, but that's on there. Now that shows up. And then the x-axis, which you might recall, is the nitrate level. If I scroll down a little bit, it says X horizontal, and here I can put in the title, and all you really need to do is put in nitrates. And in parentheses, I'm going to put in milligrams per liter, which is what that was measured on. And notice that shows up. Now we need the y-axis, and there's only one choice, it's left vertical, and this would be DO, dissolved oxygen, so it's going to be very simple, DO, and this was in parts per million. We're pretty much done. And at this point, you can make all kinds of weird colors and stuff if you want, or just hit insert, and there's your graph. So it is done. And there's this remnant here, which I don't seem to get rid of, but that's okay. So hopefully this will help you a bit.